and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
Today I'll be giving my Week 12 college football rankings and reacting to the new college football playoff rankings. And there are some problems with these. So my top five are the exact same as the college football playoff rankings. I've still got Ohio State at one. They just played UCLA, but they destroyed them 48-10, like they should. And I moved Indiana back up to two and Texas A&M back down to three because they both played terrible teams. And Indiana did what they should, blowing out Wisconsin 31-7. But Texas A&M didn't do what they should, barely escaping South Carolina at 31-30. And I moved Georgia up to at four because even though Alabama beat them, Georgia has to be ranked ahead of Alabama now because of Georgia and Ole Miss are the only two one-loss SEC teams left, and Georgia beat Ole Miss, and Ole Miss beat Oklahoma, and Oklahoma beat Alabama. And I moved Ole Miss up to number five because Alabama lost. Ole Miss didn't play great against Florida, but the win they got over Oklahoma now looks like a great win. It really looks like a better win now than Texas Tech, who I've got right below them at six, is a win over BYU. Texas Tech just played Central Florida, who is probably the fourth worst team in the Big 12, just ahead of Oklahoma State, Colorado, and West Virginia. But they destroyed them 48-9, like they should. And I've got BYU at seven. They're coming off a dominant win over TCU, 44 to 13. And TCU, while they're not a great team, they are a decent team. The CFP rankings have BYU at 11, which I think is unfair because, well, the three two-loss teams that they have ahead of BYU, Oklahoma, who they've got at eight, and Notre Dame, who they've got at nine, and Alabama, who they've got at 10. I all still think are better teams than BYU is. I think you've got to go by record at this point. And BYU's win over Utah, that is a better win than any of the wins Notre Dame has gotten so far, I think. Although it's not as good of a win as Alabama's win over Georgia or Oklahoma's win over Alabama. And I've got Oregon at eight. But like BYU, they got a dominant win over Minnesota, 42-13. And Minnesota, they're not a bad team, but they're not that good either. Well, I still think Oregon is a better team than BYU. I want to wait and see what Oregon does this week against USC before ranking them ahead of BYU. Because while Oregon and BYU both lost to the best team they've played, the USC will be the second best team that Oregon has played. And BYU, they did beat the second best team they've played so far, Utah. But the CFP has Texas Tech and Oregon both tied for six. And I disagree with that because while it's not known yet who's actually better between Texas Tech and Oregon, Texas Tech has a couple of good wins against Utah and BYU that Oregon doesn't have yet. And really, Texas Tech has seemed like a better team this season to me than Oregon is. So I've got Georgia Tech at nine. They moved up because Alabama lost in my rankings. It certainly wasn't because of the way they've played. I don't know what's happened to Georgia Tech's defense. because their defense had been pretty good all year until these last two games. They've given up 48 points to NC State and 34 points to Boston College. Two offenses that haven't even been very good. It's like Georgia Tech's defense decided to quit for the rest of the season and let the offense try to carry them, but that's not gonna work. So the CFP moved Georgia Tech down to 15. I disagree with that because while I do think four at least of the two lost teams they have ahead of Georgia Tech, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Utah are all better teams than Georgia Tech is. Think you've got to go by record right now. And Vanderbilt and Miami, who they've got at 12 and 14, who are two lost teams. I'm not convinced even that they're actually better teams than Georgia Tech. But I've got Oklahoma at 10. They have to be the highest two-loss team, in my opinion, because they beat Alabama. And Alabama's win over Georgia is a better win than any of the two-loss teams that I have ranked below Alabama. So that's why I've got Alabama at 11. And I've got Miami at 12 and Notre Dame at 13 because of Miami's win over Notre Dame. The CFP ranking Notre Dame at 9 and Miami at 14 is unfair because it's ignoring Miami's win over Notre Dame. Even though I actually do think that Notre Dame is a better team than Miami is. Notre Dame, I think, is a real top 10 team, and Miami, I don't think it is. But Miami's win over Notre Dame is a better win than any of the two lost teams that I have ranked below them have. But Miami this past week played up to their talent level again, destroying NC State 41-7. But Notre Dame seems to be a little more of a complete team than Miami. But Miami does seem to have one of college football's best defenses. Notre Dame, well, I fully expected them to beat Pittsburgh. I was a little bit surprised that they blew them out, but I wasn't shocked because of the talent difference between the two. USC at 14, because even though I think that Utah and Vanderbilt are both better teams than USC, USC's win over Michigan does seem to be a better win than any of the two lost teams that I have ranked below them have. USC, I thought, played okay against Iowa, winning 26-20, one. Because while I know 26 points doesn't seem like much for USC, to be against Iowa, that actually is a lot. And Utah, who I've got at 15, they dominated Baylor 55 to 28. Utah is probably going to go 10 and 2 because their last two games are Kansas State and Kansas. But they're probably not making it to the Big 12 championship. It looks like it's going to be the two teams that beat them, Texas Tech and BYU, playing for that. So the college football playoff does seem unlikely right now for Utah. But while Utah couldn't win a national championship anyway, if they were to get a spot in the college football playoff, I do think they'd have a chance to win a playoff game. And Vanderbilt, they didn't play. But Michigan, who I've got at 17, didn't play very well against Northwestern, having to kick a last-second field goal to beat them 24-22. Would have thought they could have won that a little easier, but Justice Haynes was out for that game, and bad news for Michigan is he's going to be out for the rest of the regular season. So I've got Houston at 18 and Virginia at 19, but these could easily be flipped around. And the CFP has Virginia ranked ahead of Houston, which I think is acceptable. I chose Houston ahead of Virginia because their win over Arizona State does seem to be a little bit better than Virginia's win over Louisville does to me. But the CFP has a Texas ranked ahead of Michigan at 17 and Michigan at 18. And I do think it's acceptable to have Texas ahead of Michigan because while Michigan has the better overall record, Texas beat Oklahoma by double digits and Michigan lost to Oklahoma by double digits, and Texas has played a tougher schedule than Michigan has. But Houston didn't play, and Virginia they played well, beating Duke 34 to 17. So I have Arizona State ranked 20 because they have the best win overall. All of the three, I mean, of all the three lost teams against Texas Tech. Now they only beat West Virginia 25 to 23 this past week, but they're lucky to be winning at all because Sam Levitt is out for the season. I've got Texas at 21 because they have the second best win of all the three lost teams against Oklahoma, and they have another good win against Vanderbilt and Louisville and SMU. They both have a good win against Miami, but I think Oklahoma is a better team than Miami is. But Louisville, I chose them ahead of SMU because they beat Miami in regulation on the road, and SMU they beat them at home in overtime. But this could easily be flipped around because Louisville seems to have fallen apart, losing to Clemson because of bad special teams, and SMU has been playing really well recently. I've got Tennessee at 24, Missouri at 25, but these could easily be flipped around because neither one has won anything big. So Tennessee beat New Mexico State 42 to 9, and I'm surprised they didn't run the score way higher than that because I know how Tennessee lives for these kind of games. In Missouri, they destroyed Mississippi State 49 to 27. I know Mississippi State's defense is terrible, but I'm still surprised Missouri scored that much without Bo Prabila at quarterback, and that's really why I chose Tennessee ahead of Missouri is because Missouri doesn't have Bo Prabila. But the CFP ranking Tennessee and Missouri and not ranking Arizona State, SMU, and Louisville is unfair because Tennessee and Missouri haven't won anything big, and the others have. And the CFP ranked three group of five teams. James Madison at 21, North Texas at 22, and Tulane at 24. And while I still don't think you should be ranking group of five teams, uh, if you're going to rank group of five teams, I think Tulane needs to be the highest ranked and Navy the second highest because they both beat Memphis and Memphis beat South Florida and South Florida and Memphis, they're both three loss teams, but South Florida blew out North Texas. And James Madison, they shouldn't be anywhere near the top 25. They're in the Sun Belt only, and they don't have any Power Four wins or any wins against these other group of five teams that I just mentioned. But that'll be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.